When you truly have a higher purpose, it would be rare that you're ever really able to complete that. It is a journey, and I think it's that journey and the opportunity to continuously improve and expand and deliver on that higher purpose is what inspires the continuity and the longevity of that organization. And we discussed this at length with John. Obviously, when he was still here, there was a small circle of us that knew a year before he was leaving that he was leaving, and we really spent a year in thoughtful conversations to make sure we didn't screw it up. And then once John retired, we spent the next year ensuring the message that nothing is changing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Conscious Capitalists with myself, Timothy Henry, and my partner in making the world a better place through business, Raj Sisodia. Hey there, Raj.
Hey, Timothy. Good to see you again, as always.
Yes, indeed. And this week, we're talking to someone from one of our favorite companies, Whole Foods Market. And of course, John Mackey, former CEO and co-founder, as one of the originators of Conscious Capitalism. Today, we're talking to one of their senior executives, Sonya Gafsi-Oblisk. She's the Chief Merchandising and Marketing Officer at Whole Foods. And she has over 20 years of experience in retail and consumer goods marketing and brand management. She's deeply passionate about putting customers at the center of all decision-making and advancing Whole Foods' mission. As the Chief Merchandising and Marketing Officer at Whole Foods, she leads the efforts there around merchandising, marketing, communications, and e-commerce, while also overseeing the digital product management. With nearly 20 years of experience in retail and consumer goods marketing and brand management, she's deeply passionate about putting customers at the center of all decision-making and advancing Whole Foods Market's mission through their product quality standards. Before joining Whole Foods, she served as a company officer at Walmart, most recently as Vice President of Marketing for Sam's Club. She holds a Master's of Business Administration from the Anderson School at UCLA, and she has a Bachelor of Arts from Emory School in Atlanta. Outside of work, she is a yoga enthusiast, an avid scuba diver, and she and her husband, Dave, enjoy traveling, cooking, and exploring the trails around Austin. Sonya, welcome to our show.
Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, one of the things I want to start with is framing our conversation, because you sort of come from, in some ways, a traditional marketing background. You spent some time at Pepsi, you spent some time at Walmart, Sam's Club, and now you're over at Whole Foods Market. Tell us a little bit about that journey and specifically what it's like to then step into Whole Foods and maybe a different world and a different way of looking at the world.
A little bit of my background, as you spoke to, I started my career after business school in the CPG space. As a traditional brand management MBA, I was the associate brand manager on Velveeta. Was my first job. I actually had never eaten Velveeta in my life. I grew up on the East Coast. It's not a big thing on the East Coast. But it really, I learned so much about customer insights and marketing and really how to translate customer insights into action. I'll never forget my first week at Whole Foods. John Mackey, our co-founder, who is also my boss here for 7 years, said to me, you're the first marketer that we've hired from the outside. And we were talking about marketing. And he finished the conversation by saying, all business is about marketing. And by that, he really meant all business is about knowing your customer and being able to deliver a delightful experience for your customer. And that's kind of, for me, the red thread that connects my entire career, whether it was my work on the private label business at Walmart, my work in the global juice business at the Coca-Cola Company, my work leading membership or marketing at Sam's Club, and now my work here at Whole Foods, which not only includes marketing, but also merchandising, which, some people may not understand what that is, but those are the teams that actually buy and choose all of the incredible products that we sell in our stores. And it's really around managing all those supplier relationships and our quality standards to bring just a compelling assortment to life. I also get to lead our e-commerce team, which is an incredible business that we're really excited about, not just for Whole Foods, but also our role within the broader Amazon family and what we're able to do to bring, an innovation into convenience and speed and food access, which we have a ton of passion about at Whole Foods. As you all know, our higher purpose, part of what we have as a conscious capitalism company, we have a higher purpose, which is to nourish people and the planet. And by doing that, a big portion of that is about food access and bringing highest quality natural and organic foods to more customers and more communities and supporting more suppliers, farmers, growers, and ranchers that participate in sustainable and responsible practices that will allow us to source those foods. And then I also get to work with our digital products team. That is the team that develops all of the technology and tooling that we have, whether it's tools that we use in stores that help, simplify, what are very redundant, lower value added tasks to make team members' jobs more delightful in stores, to make our business more accurate and efficient and less wasteful, to all of the tools that we have that are customer facing, whether it's our e-commerce portal or our new catering portal that was relaunched last year, but all those technology and tools. And then lastly, I get to work with our business strategy group. And so that's the group that's really thinking, what's going to happen in 10 years? How are we going to continue not only to grow as a company, but equally as important to advance our mission? And how are we going to continue to leverage the incredible gift of technology and tools that we have as being a part of Amazon to really change the grocery retail experience for customers?
Wow, you
Mm.
cover a lot of
Absolutely.
territory.
You have a lot of jobs and a lot of responsibilities over there, but I can see
I
how.
I think I have the best job in the world, so I feel very lucky.
But I want to go back to the early days of my involvement. As Timothy said, we met John early, and before we started Conscious Capitalism. But I had written about Whole Foods in a book called Firms of Endearment, and it had started really as a study of companies that did not spend a ton of money on marketing and yet had outstanding customer loyalty and trust. Because all my 10 years of research on marketing, productivity, efficiency, effectiveness, and even ethics had found that overall companies were spending more and more year after year on marketing, on ads and coupons and junk mail and all of that, constant sales. And yet customer loyalty and trust were declining at an aggregate level. Customer satisfaction was also plateaued at a relatively low level. And so I said, that's a lot of money, $1 trillion being spent on ads, coupons, and junk mail in this country at that time. And is there another way to think about marketing, and which companies are practicing a different approach to marketing? And so I found Whole Foods as one of those companies that when I first met John in October of 2007, and he gave me a tour of the store there in Austin, probably right below where you're sitting. And and at the end, he looked across at an ad agency, GSD&M, and he said, "That's a great ad agency." I said, "Are they your agency?" He said, "No, we don't have an ad agency. We don't have a chief marketing officer. And we spend 95% less than the industry on marketing as a percentage of sales. We're 5% where the industry is. And most of what we spend is at the store level, and most of that has to do with our community activity. So we really don't pay much attention to marketing per se. We do pay attention to the well-being of our customers, and we treat them as our guests and family members when they come in, so we want to do the right thing for them. So that was kind of a different approach to marketing. It's not about marketing so much as it is about customers and making sure that we are serving them to the best ability and doing and in a way leading them, not just following them, but leading them, right? So if you could talk a little bit about that mindset. I know over the years, Whole Foods did start to spend a little more. And I think there's always a good balance, putting some ads out there, letting people know what you stand for, basically. Not promotional kind of things, but really more values based, right? And then if you could talk about how you would define conscious marketing, because that seems to be what Whole Foods is practicing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for providing that historical perspective. That is absolutely the case. Being a pioneer in natural and organic food retail meant that Whole Foods really was able to uh, gain a lot of attention in media and the market just through its very unique customer proposition and word of mouth marketing. And really, it was all about PR and community engagement, which actually the community engagement, although technically marketing, was really tying back to one of our core values, which is we support communities and the environment. And it was looking at the communities where we do business as a stakeholder. And how do we support them? And yes, I am still sitting in the office right above the store here. GSD&M is right across the street, and I am happy to report that we still do not have an advertising agency at Whole Foods Market. So much has changed, but nothing has changed. In all seriousness, though, I once was having a conversation with Walter Robb, who was co-CEOs with John right when I started at the company, and Walter said to me, we've never had a chief marketing officer before, but we've built this incredible brand and none of us knew anything about brand and marketing. How did we do this? And I said, well, I wasn't there, so maybe I shouldn't be the person answering this question, but I'll tell you my, hindsight view, which is that Whole Foods, being a purpose-driven company and focusing on living truly and authentically and in an unwavering manner our commitment to our customers, which is all grounded in our quality standards. I often say when I'm talking to team member audiences, quality standards are the nucleus of our brand at Whole Foods. You all know we have incredible standards about how we source our product. We ban 500 different ingredients from our stores. All of this equates to an incredible level of customer trust that we'd have done the work for them. They know when they walk in our door that anything that they buy, they can feel good about eating, they can feel good about feeding their families, whether it's something indulgent like our chantilly cakes or our brown butter cookies, or something as pure and healthful as our wet wall, some of our greens in our produce department, they can feel good about it. And because of our commitment to that purpose and that customer trust, that is what built our brand. And so we're never going to be, nor are we, about big, flashy, billion-dollar marketing budgets. We're really about education, informing, and empowering our customers. And that's really, really what we focus on doing as we talk about our items and our products and our programs and our standards. And because of the nature of what we sell, for a long time, our biggest marketing challenge as a company was around price perception. We were a very interesting brand. I give this story to so many people when they ask me about Whole Foods. I had never, you look at my career, I worked with all these top companies, all these huge brands. And I never had the experience where customers, when we did our research, would say to us, I love Whole Foods so much. It's my favorite retailer. I wish I could shop you all more, but I can't afford you. And then when I would actually go look at the data, yes, we had a slight premium, but the perception was so much worse than the reality. So I knew my job is how do I close that perception gap? And that is what I've been steadily doing for the past almost 9 years. And, in the last 2 years, we have made incredible progress in that space. Last year, in terms of like the actual pricing reality, we lowered prices on over 25% of the items that we sell, including over 900 of our own brand items, the beloved 365 brand, which we know everyone knows and loves, and our Whole Food Market brand. And so not only did we move the needle on actual pricing, but we saw an exponential uptick on price perception. And that combined with smart marketing, not excessive marketing, and really marketing that focused less on big flashy messages and much more about customer experience in store through a program that we call our elevated events. So every twice a month we'll have a different theme, and we'll have the whole store participate in the theme. In sales, we have really great door-busting sales and great merchandising and sampling, and it's an opportunity for customers to experience what they love so much about Whole Foods, which is this element of discovery paired with customer trust, paired with highest quality natural and organic and a range of assortment. I want when a customer walks in our store, regardless of where they're shopping, that they can find something they can afford in every single category. And that's really how we think about our assortment is it's all about offering a diverse range but grounded in affordability because again, this is all what ladders back to our mission of nourishing people and the planet. And to your question about conscious marketing, that to me is really about authenticity. It's about transparency. It's about consistency. It's about education and it's about customer empowerment. We hold ourselves to a very high standard. Are there to mislead or imply or infer something bigger, better, or, slightly different than what reality is. And I will say, quite frankly, that is a hard thing for us. We often get disadvantaged in the marketplace. We are given less credit than we deserve relative to our quality standards, relative to what we're doing, because everyone else is out there with big messages and greenwashing and you know what? I use my yoga training here. I go inside and I focus on myself. And that's what I tell the team. Like, let's go inside and focus on ourselves. We are always best when we are the best version of ourselves. And I always think a brand is a person. And that's how I manage this brand. We have to be the best version of ourselves. We're consistent, we're honest, and we do at every cost protect our customer trust and protect our quality standards. And that has been like a huge part of our journey. And like I said, even as part of Amazon now, that is one thing that I am so grateful for the wisdom of their leadership and the board that has been Whole Foods, you keep doing what you are doing. We're never asked to change anything about our supply chain or our quality standards. We are encouraged to continue to provide what, quite frankly, is a service to the marketplace. John, I'll give one last thing. John Mackey, another word of wisdom he imparted on me as I was onboarding onto the company, which is Whole Foods Market is the tip of the spear. And we are in so many different ways, especially as we think about ways to build a more sustainable and safe food system for all and provide better food access to all. And so I always have all of my marketers think about that, think about what we're doing, our merchants thinking about that. So we think about how we buy and source product, how we talk about product, and how we educate customers to be more food aware.
So that's what I love is that challenge of educating your customer and yet meeting their demands. And I think of your latest example around the seafood code of conduct, which I read that and I went, "Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
amazing." All the way down to amount of time fishermen are on boats and really thorough and really amazing. And I say, I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't interviewing you. So I'm wondering where that balance is because, I went online, I looked, and there's
yeah,
a sentence in there somewhere about responsible fishing and
sure.
responsible farming. But how do you help? How do you find that balance of not spending big money on marketing, educating the consumer, especially when it's a breakthrough practice that you've put out there? How do you think about that as a marketer in your role?
this is something I had to learn my way through, particularly my first few years at this company, because it is such a complicated uh, opportunity issue. I don't even know how to describe it. And very, very different. Just taking a step back, if we think about food and what the customer's relationship with food, like food is about joy and celebration and family and all of these like fun, joyful emotions. It's not about like science and work. And so we want a trip to the grocery store to be um inspiring, to help folks achieve their own aspirations for how they want to eat and live better. And we want it to be fun, and we want to deliver on this element of discovery, which is what like folks, a great insight about our customers, something that I loved again as I was first learning about our customers is that like an insight is like our customers over index in curiosity. They like crossword puzzles. They love to listen to the news and things because they're always trying to learn and do better. And that's exactly how they approach their eating, how they approach, managing their household and buying their household cleaning products, their body care, you name it. But it's just a really, really, really interesting insight. And so I want to be able to support that need and help customers on their journey. But what I certainly don't want to do is judge customers. I don't want to take away the joy and fun. Whole Foods in our brand positioning, just to go a little bit out there into the marketing ether, we talk about ourselves as a feel good sanctuary. But that is, if you listen to so many popular culture references, you'll hear folks say, I was really stressed out. I just needed to calm myself down. So I went to Whole Foods. And it is so true. People just love the stores. Like it's a great environment. The team members are fun. The products are beautiful. And I want to maintain that joy. So, someone that I worked with used to use this expression, and I'm like, it really, to me, encapsulates how we think about talking about or marketing our food and quality standards, which is show me the cake, don't tell me the ingredients. And it really is like customers want to know what's in it for me, but it's like when you start to go so deep into science, you lose them. And in fact, it like works against us and our mission of getting customers inspired to live and eat better. So we make sure we do have channels like our website and other outlets like podcasts that help provide a deeper dive and information for those that are ready to receive that and those that want to know more. But the most important thing is that we meet customers where they are today. And we start with like that baseline understanding. And even though they may not know why, helping to preserve, protect, and even further strengthen that trust that we have.
Well, I want to go back before we go more into the seafood thing, which is quite fascinating. I want to go back to the roots of this. There's so many iconic stories about Whole Foods, starting with the flood,
Yes.
and how the company would not exist actually today were it not for the love shown by the stakeholders. But also the famous duck lady, right, who would show up at annual meetings holding, carrying pictures of mutilated ducks and so forth. And finally, John stopped and said, "What is it that you're trying to tell us? Why are you doing this?" And she said, "Do you have any idea what's happening to the ducks before you're selling them?" He said, "I think we have pretty good standards." He said, "You have no idea what you're talking about." And she said, "Would you like to learn?" He said, "Yes." So she sent him a bunch of books, and I think John spent that whole summer reading 7, 8, or 9 books on factory farming. And
Mhm.
by the end of that was born the whole idea of the global animal partnership and the humane treatment of animals in the farming system. That became a responsibility that Whole Foods took on to reduce the amount of cruelty that we are ingesting and we are indirectly responsible for as customers, right? Everything from not selling those live lobsters, in the stores, but also much more than that, the 5 or 6 levels of humane treatment, and that becoming a standard in the industry, and the farmers able to get more, for premium price if they're doing some of those things to be able to recoup their investments. So there's a long history of that, which I think has been one of the most, but perhaps least known aspects of Whole Foods' contribution to our overall food culture and how we live, you know. And I think what you're doing now is a continuation of that. Um, so some of the you know the elements of that code of conduct. So just tell us how that came about, why that was an issue at this point in time, what was not being done that needed to be done, and what was the process for coming up with many of those elements, such as providing Wi-Fi access at sea and banning burial at sea, and there are many things like that. I mean, this goes beyond sort
Yeah,
of the normal
yeah.
things you expect.
As you know, at Whole Foods, we work from the stakeholder model and we really rely heavily on our full stakeholder group to understand scope and extent of problems and then work on actionable, realistic solutions, or and even if not a full solution, at least a step of progress and management within our degrees of control. So known issue that there is a lot of human slavery, inhumane working conditions, which impacts the full seafood industry. We, as part of our standards, are very selective about the partners that we work with at Whole Foods. We always try to identify what we would call mission aligned suppliers, those people that share values as a baseline. But sometimes that isn't enough, which means we also have certifiers and auditors that ensure that our suppliers on their side are also adhering to the commitments and the expectations that we have for how our products are farmed and raised and harvested. So, specific to Seafood Code of Conduct, this is actually part of a larger initiative that we're working on with the Amazon sustainability team around social responsibility in labor practices, which, spans not only the food industry, but so many other consumer product good cases. So it was really around understanding based on the science and the industry research, and then translating that into an actionable policy that we could get buy-in and, more importantly, compliance. Like, it's nice to have words on a page, but that's not really helpful. Like, we need things that are realistic and compliant, and we need long-term commitment to adherence to them. And that's kind of the process that we go through in this work.
And how does that I mean, I'm just curious at the management level, executive management team, you're sitting around and Sonia says, I don't know, I think we ought to look at our seafood standards. And I mean, how does that evolve as a priority for the organization to go, we're going to spend some time, resources, and energy getting this right and setting a new standard?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's at multiple levels that you've done it, and I'm just because you were already leading in some ways,
Yeah. We
you were
absolutely were.
already leading in seafood at some level, and then you made a decision that it's important for us to go deeper, and I'm just curious how the executive team, like, what's the dialogue?
I mean, this goes back to the comment that I made that like I said, it was a pearl of wisdom from John Mackey, which is Whole Foods Market is the tip of the spear. And so even though we're already leading, we were leading, folks, competitors were starting to catch us, which ultimately we want to do because our goal is to be the rising tide that lifts every industry for which we connect and do business with. We were leading, and there's still so much more to do. And thankfully, it doesn't just fall on the shoulders of the executive team, but as with anything else in, business and life, when you want to make progress, it takes focus and it takes a commitment and it takes resources, whatever those may be, time, effort, energy. And at Whole Foods, we structurally have built that into our business model so that we call quality standards or sustainability is inherent to the way we do business. It's not an afterthought. It's not a program. It's not a trendy thing because we need to get some credit for doing good because that's just what we've learned in our brand equity tracker. It is, as I go back to, quality standards are the nucleus of our brand. And so we have an incredible team of team members that this is all they do and think about all day long. They are researching ingredients. They are plugged into every major industry association. They are working with the certifiers. They then continue to evaluate what are the opportunities, what are the potential to tackle them, and then how does that translate into actual standards that we can use to guide our buying practices.
Yeah.
And so it's the work of this incredible team to actually lean into the science, lean into the policy, lean into the technology in many cases to understand how can we know more and then do better. And that is where Whole Foods was very, it took me a year or two to understand, like, what does this quality standards team actually do? Like, normally it's the merchants, the buyers that decide like what's in and what's out, and what is this extra group of people doing? And I'm gonna have to evaluate this. And then once I knew, and I'm like, my goodness, like their work is like foundational to who we are, and without them, we couldn't be who we are. And you like again, as the rising tide, if I look back historically, it is this incredible woman, Margaret Wittenberg, who used to lead our quality standards team. I mean, she was on the board of the USDA that originally wrote the guidelines for organic. I mean, we are that entrenched in the policy and definition and the science of all that we do. It is the company DNA. And this goes back to the authenticity of us, not only as a conscious capitalist, but it goes to the authenticity of us as it relates to our higher purpose of nourishing people on the planet.
Well, I think, Sonia, you're touching on a very important aspect of what it means to be a conscious company, that you're not just thinking of competitive advantage and being the best company you can be, but actually elevating the entire industry and celebrating when others in the industry start doing some of these things. I remember being with John when Walmart made a big announcement about expanding their natural and organic selection.
Yes.
And I said, John, how do you feel about this? He said, well, I think it's good news and bad news. He said it's bad news in the sense that Walmart is a tough competitor. They'll put a lot of pressure on us on price and other things. But on the other hand, it's great news because our purpose is to have more people to get access to natural organic food and be affordable. And Walmart will now help us achieve our purpose. They have become a fellow traveler. And ultimately, that's what we're about. And I think every conscious company needs to think that way, right? That we're not just about gaining short-term advantage, but actually lifting. But maintaining that responsibility of being the edge of the tip of the
The
spear.
tip of the
Yes,
spear.
call it,
Yes.
right? So we have to continue. We can't rest on our laurels. We have to continue to move in that direction. Um, but one of the things that I worry about, and especially now that John has left the company, so what happens to a conscious company over time? There is a phenomenon I label it losing heart. Some companies kind of lose the red thread. You talk about the red thread or something, right? You forget who you are, and you become just another airline or retailer or whatever it happens to be. Especially when the last links to the founding energy disappear, when you don't have anybody who even remembers who the founder was, right? And I think that's, to me, the big worry that I have about conscious companies. How do we sustain that consciousness and actually continue to elevate it? And how do we embed this into the very DNA so that it's not dependent upon the presence of a leader or a memory of a leader? Is that something? How do you feel about that applies at Whole Foods going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the sustainability of a mission or a purpose obviously is absolutely critical when we think about a conscious company. Uh, I guess I'll start by saying, when you truly have a higher purpose, it's would be rare that you're ever really able to complete that. It is a journey, and I think it's that journey and the opportunity to continuously improve and expand and deliver on that higher purpose is what inspires the continuity and the longevity of that organization. I will also say, and we discussed this at length, with John, obviously, when he was still here, there was a small circle of us that knew a year before he was leaving that he was leaving. And we really spent a year in thoughtful conversations, to make sure we didn't screw it up. Uh, so we were focused on that. And then once John retired, we spent the next year ensuring the message that nothing is changing. But I will go back to one of the, core characteristics of a conscious company is around a conscious culture. And to me, it is that culture. If you really are nurturing and investing in culture, that is where all of this lives. It's not dependent on the individual. And I will say that is exactly what we did the year after John retired, was focusing on nurturing culture. So we did something that, well, in anticipating of John retiring, we set up a series of team member connections, which we called Whole Conversations. So Jason, the incoming CEO, some other executives, we traveled around to each one of the region offices at that time, met with a group of 100 or so team members. We had a great, like, purpose invigorating team build, visiting local suppliers. And then we spent a day in a workshop capturing thoughts around, like, what do we want to keep? What do we want to make sure lives on? What are our opportunities to change, not fundamentally changing who we are as a company, but changing and improving our ways of working, making us better and stronger and more durable to ensure that we protect the future of the company. So we did that. And then once John retired, we started something else beginning in the January of 2023. We unveiled our new company strategy, our long-term vision for profitable, sustainable growth in service of our higher purpose, which we call growing with purpose. And then what we did, there was a group of 7 of us, our executive team. We did a divide and conquer, and each of us went out on the road for the year, and we did a team member connection in every single one of our stores and facilities. That's almost 600 locations with 7 people, 7 executives, mind you, C-suite executives who actually do have full-time jobs back at the office. We visited and we had these connections, and we talked about growing with purpose, and we got team member feedback, and we answered tough questions, and we had candid conversations, and we built trust. And it was so awesome. It was such a win-win. I learned so much about what was happening in the stores, what was happening with the programs, what can my teams do better in service of our team members in the stores, in service of our customers, what was closing that gap and creating that feedback loop between, like, what we're planning and what is actually happening, like, invaluable. So we did Growing with Purpose. It was a resounding success, and we are now on year 3 of Growing with Purpose. We've added all of our leadership teams, so we call it a WFLN, Whole Foods Leadership Network. So there's a slightly larger group, thank goodness, of folks doing these trips, but we are out there still. This year I was in Arizona. I went down and visited Tucson, our Flagstaff, Sedona stores. Last week I was just in Colorado, out in ski country in Frisco and Basalt Aspen, visiting stores. And next week I'm going on a big road trip I'm excited about. I'm flying into Memphis and going down to Jackson, Mississippi, and Birmingham and Huntsville and Nashville. But it's like, this is not a sexy job. This is like pounding the pavement, driving the highways, but getting to those stores and just being inspired by these team members and, like, hearing their connection, hearing what they're doing to build and grow culture. And, it's, if ever I have one shred of doubt or fear in the future, all I need to do is go and spend a day in the store and hear the level of connection of our team members to the company, to our higher purpose, to our products, their knowledge of our products and programs. And it's like all of this that creates this great customer experience that we have. And it really is fundamentally what makes Whole Foods so unique and different as a retailer.
Oh, that's a brilliant tale of that. And I'm just curious, to the CEOs that are listening right now, in going through that process, because you also came from Walmart,
I
and
did.
Walmart's got its culture, and
They do.
you were at a soft drink company before that, and it has its culture, um, and now you're at Whole Foods. What are the one or two things for a conscious leader that you learned, particularly from the switch from Walmart to Whole Foods, about how to help keep a conscious culture, a caring culture alive?
I am lucky, I would say, in that I have just had an amazing set of career experiences. I have been given opportunities to contribute at a huge high level, do transformational work in like all the roles that I have. I had an incredible experience working at Walmart and Sam's Club, and I have huge admiration for that company. It was so funny coming in the doors. People are like, "We're not hiring someone from Walmart. We're Whole Foods." And the one person again who like would always say like, no, Walmart is also a mission-driven company would be John because he actually understood, save money, live better is just like us at Whole Foods. We talk about, we want to nourish people on the planet. Like at Walmart, there's that same sense of pride and connection to save money, live better. They play a very important role in the economic system, in the lives of a lot of consumers who just simply wouldn't have the quality of life that they have were it not for the affordability that Walmart provides them to actually buy essentials and more in their lives. And this goes back to like I always talk to team members when they're asking for coaching or mentoring. I'm like, you can learn something from everybody and anybody if you actually listen with an open mind and an open heart. And, Walmart has a different culture than Whole Foods, but they have a very strong culture with a lot of incredible values that I think many, many companies would love to have. The sense of accountability and empowerment of team members, the connection. I mean, my favorite, I can still rattle off the core values at Walmart. My favorite core value at Walmart was respect for the individual. And I love that because that was all about accountability. Like when you say you're going to do something for someone, you do it. And it's like how you interact with others, how you show up in your own self leadership. So I think this notion of like being able, it's just like, when I worked in a global role at Coca-Cola, I worked on a juice business, but I was working in Japan and Spain and Brazil and Turkey and the US. And like, I needed to go into all of these markets. I needed to understand customers. I needed to show respect. I needed to build relationships with the teams and being able to lead through influence, which is a very hard thing to do when you don't speak the language. But like this notion of being able to adapt to your environment, to learn, and to understand their values and like take that with you, build it into your toolkit as a leader, but also just as a human being into your interactions, I think is really, really important for a conscious leader. And working in different company cultures, in different country cultures, has allowed me to do that. And one thing that I will have to say that I really love is like, um, we have a culture, we have written core values, we have a declaration of interdependence, we have leadership principles, we have all of these things. And yet everybody gets to interpret them differently. And how I express them and what they mean to me, Sonia, based on my life perspective and my experiences and the work that I do and the teams that I lead, is very different than others. And so it's like, I really get like inspired and excited to see team members and how that comes to life for them and how that connects them to the company, to their work, to the higher purpose, and to just our community, whether it's in the office, in the stores, or within the communities that we serve.
And Sonia, you are also running the foundation now, the Whole Foods Foundation.
It's part of my team. I do not our SVP, our senior vice president of our center store business, Alyssa Vesho, is the executive leader, and she is on my team. So yes, I am also part of the foundation's team, very proudly so.
So is that what used to be the Whole Planet Foundation is now called the Whole Foods
It
Foundation? Is that
is. We actually, as you may know, we used to have three distinct foundations with three different missions. So we had the Whole Planet Foundation, which was really about alleviating global poverty through micro lending. My goodness, where's my tongue going? Then we had the Whole Kids Foundation, which was about food access for elementary school aged kids through school
school
salad
lunch?
bars
Yeah.
and gardens.
Hmm.
And then we had Whole Cities Foundation, which was really around serving underserved populations with limited food access, with nutritional information. In the last year, what we've done is merged those three under the umbrella of the Whole Foods Market Foundation. And that's really with the lens of being able to allow us efficiency and scale and flexibility in terms of our investments and our programming, but also to our earlier discussion around responsible marketing and responsible use of funds. It also created scale, so we weren't having a marketing team or a fundraising team or whatever it is for each of those foundations, but we actually could maximize the investments going back out into projects and communities.
I want to come back to this tip of the spear discussion because I think one of the unwritten stories about Whole Foods is how you have incubated so many companies to be
Oh my
able to
goodness.
grow and become at scale national brands. And we recently had Matt O'Hare from Vital Farms on,
Oh,
and
that's
and he
wonderful.
was talking about the breakthrough of getting into one store and then many stores. And just as a side note, he also mentioned when, you're working with Whole Foods, you get a 20-page quality specification down to how many square feet per hen. And he said, I was working this other store who also has a very good reputation, but it was one page. He says, you want to know the difference. But I think one of the things that's not always recognized is how many companies got their start because somebody in merchandising at Whole Foods said, "This is interesting," and then put it into one store, and then, over time, you were able to spread it. So I'm curious that from the merchandising strategy point of view, how do you communicate or even begin that dialogue around with the merchandising team in terms of, "Here's our merchandising strategy."
Yeah.
How does that dialogue go?
So there's a lot that happens at different layers and levels within the company. To your point, I think if you walk to the aisles of our store or any other natural and organic store, most of the major brands that you see on the shelf will have a story of Whole Foods found me and allowed me to start my business. And I just want to start by saying, like, um, this is a great example of the stakeholder model because it's not just that they walked into a Whole Foods and they asked to get onto the shelf and that happened. In many cases, we actually invest in these companies and we give them guidance and advice and help them, optimize their packaging or if there's formulation issues or what. So we are like equal partners and co-creators in many of these products. We actually have two programs that we've had, one for a long time, one that's newer that support this. We have what we call LP, our local producer loan program, for which we provide loans to these emerging brand companies that really to get to scale and to be able to become a national supplier for us, they need some type of capital investment. And so we can provide that to them in a much more affordable way than they may get elsewhere in the market, which we know is really important to mission driven companies. So that's a huge service that we're able to provide. We also, a few years ago, started a really awesome program that's called LEAP. It's a local and emerging brands accelerator program. And this is a program where new founders can write an application, submit, and we like I think last time we had like 1,600 applications for like a few dozen slots. But they kind of get brought in as a cohort, and they're taken through a boot camp of like how do you launch a product, everything food safety and packaging and marketing and all the things that they need to be successful and then get brought to market. So we have that infrastructure in place. And then within the merchant organization, we actually, again, similar to my discussion on quality standards, when something is important to you, you put focus and resources behind it. We have focus and resource through a team of local foragers. And those foragers, their entire job is to be out in communities. They're each assigned to a handful of metro areas to go to food fairs and farmers markets and everything else to look and discover and find new items and brands that we may bring into Whole Foods so that we can offer, we can be the tip of the spear. We can offer this discovery experience, and we do that within the context of what our core merchandising team is doing, which is setting a category level strategy, an assortment, and defining our planograms, what shelves look like, and a pricing strategy, and everything else. So those two teams work in collaboration with one another.
Sonia, we always like to delve into why people become conscious leaders and why they choose to join companies like this. Um, and the way I frame it is that traditional business is all about the head and the wallet. I mean, you went to business school, right? It's all about the theories, the frameworks, and the analytics, but always going to the bottom line. And I think in a conscious business, we bring in the heart and the spirit, right? Our emotions and our inspiration. And I wasn't really emotionally connected or inspired in my business education. I can't remember being inspired or emotionally moved. But I think in the conscious business world, that happens a lot, all the time. So I wonder if you could relate to that notion that we bring the head and the spirit, the heart and the spirit into business, and that gives it so much more power, I believe.
I can totally relate to that. I would say early in my career, I had so much spirit around the learning aspect of my job. So it was like I was learning to be a marketer and learning how to be an executive and learning how to operate in large multinational organizations. And I also got so much inspiration out of the customer. And then when I finally made the shift into Whole Foods going on 9 years ago, I was kind of a bit conflicted. I had a great job at Sam's Club and I was doing really well and I didn't know if I wanted to leave. And like I was really struggling with this decision. And my husband said to me one day, he's like, "Have you lost your mind?" He's like, "I don't know anybody that loves Whole Foods more than you. How can you not take this job?" And I was like, "You know what? That sucker's right." So I made the leap and I did it. But it was, I often describe this to people as like this is the first time in the career where like my personal interest around wellness and health and inspiring and helping others through lifestyle and diet, that I'm actually able to incorporate that into my daily work and my daily life. And like that is so fulfilling. I also think, there's like something about the culture here and the nature of even our team members being curious and interested and passionate about food and wellness and lifestyle, that it's like we have a community that supports one another. I will tell you personally, I always thought I knew a lot. Like I've been a lifelong athlete. Like I thought I knew a lot about fitness and wellness and health. And I have like my knowledge and understanding and how I eat has changed radically. Like I'm always forever grateful to the company and to John. My first year at Whole Foods, John sent me on a health immersion and my husband as well. Health immersion is a program that we have. It's actually free to team members. Whole Foods funds it. And you go away for a week to learn about plant-based eating and cooking and nutrition. And I took so much away. And do I practice 100%? No, but I do practice 80%. And again, it's like the awareness and the knowledge, no better do better. But it's really like, to me, that's the win-win. Like it has, I feel like I've given a lot to the company. I certainly get a lot of joy out of my job every day. And I feel like I've gotten so much back in terms of the health and well-being of myself, my family, and what I'm able to translate into my friends, my social circles, and even coaching other team members, new team members as they come through the door, or team members out in our stores. It's nice to be part of the solution, and it's nice to be able to give back in small ways every single day.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. One more business question, then
Yes, sir.
Raj will move over to his rapid fire questions at
Oh
the
my
end.
goodness. Okay.
But
Uh-oh.
as you said earlier, part of the thing about Whole Foods is the joy of coming in, the lighting, the coloring, the people. Um, and I also noticed that you're in charge of the digital experience, um, and I'm always fascinated by, again, how do you help conscious consumers have the same experience or whatever an equivalent online experience is that differentiates Whole Foods versus a Wegmans or anybody or Walmart, who also have online offerings. And how does that experience come across in the Whole Foods way? And how do you see that changing as you go forward? Because I know it's just really easy for me. I love going to the stores, but some days, yeah, I'm in Dallas today. Guess what? I'm going to order my groceries from the store, from the airport, and
Mhm.
I don't get to go into the store. Um, but so much of that is how do you help continue to translate the experience and educate the customer?
And I think what you just said around translate the experience is the key, because the experience is never going to be the same. Early on in our journey of e-commerce, the team had this North Star vision of like, we want to replicate the in-store business or experience online. The reality is, to the example you just gave, customers shopping online tend to have a slightly different need state. They tend to be a little bit less in discovery mode. They want to spend less time getting lost in the aisles, exploring, daydreaming, like researching, all of these things that I do that takes me like 4 hours to go grocery shopping. And they just want to get it done, but still find what they need. So the translation of the experience is so, 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 so important. We still have like fundamental tenets that we want to lead with value. We want it to be able to be, again, transparent and quick to shop, and customers, have the right filters and search mechanisms to find exactly what they need, whether it's, I'm looking for 365 items, or I want to know what our best sales are, or I want to be able to understand what is the gap rating for animal welfare for these products. Like, we have to be able to deliver on all that, but it's also the element of speed and ease of basket building is really, really important on the online context. We are definitely on a journey there. We are nowhere near where we want to be, and we keep getting better every day. That's really important. And, as I think longer term in the bigger context of being part of the Amazon family, that's also what's really exciting when we think about what Whole Foods offers in our storefront, in our assortment, what the other Amazon banners offer, whether it's Amazon Fresh or the .com business, and that we really can help customers, fulfill all of their shopping trips and missions in one stop is really, really exciting. And that's an experience that I'm really looking forward to further building and developing for our customers, because I do think it will be breakthrough for the industry.
Count me in on a beta test if you need one.
Awesome. Well, I'm signing you up.
I was at the Amazon headquarters 2 days ago in Seattle,
Oh, good.
and we were inside those spheres. You're
Yes, the
familiar with
spheres are
them, right?
beautiful.
And they have trees and vegetation from all over the world. And I felt like some of Whole Foods is ethos is getting into Amazon probably.
Well, we have a lot of supporters between the senior leadership and the board of directors. They really do nurture the brand and believe in the brand and the business and the mission. And while it's expressed differently, there's a lot of elements of our mission, our focus on the environment that also comes to life in what is the Amazon mission. So it's a nice complementary relationship.
And now I have some quick questions for you.
Sure thing.
A little more fun. Do you have a personal purpose statement, or how do you think about that?
Yes, I actually
Huh?
do. It's short and sweet, but my purpose is to unlock potential.
As a leader, I mean that's great if you can unlock potential in the people in your team as well as in the company. That's good.
Everything. Yep.
Yeah, and your children and family and everybody. Do you have a contemplative practice in addition to yoga? Do you do some meditation or anything like that, or do you go on retreats?
I look at yoga and now most recently skiing is my new hobby as my moving meditation. But I really do find like my mindfulness practice also involves physical movement. It's when quiet my mind the most and can go very deep inside in thought and with my breath.
Have you joined John on one of his hikes on the Appalachian Trail or any of
I
those?
have not been on one of the hikes, however, I have joined him scuba diving on his boat, which was such a treat and a lot of fun, and we do go hiking, so I have been on hikes with him. I haven't done the long distance on the Appalachian Trail, though.
Now, what are some books that you think every conscious leader should read, or are there books that have influenced you as a leader?
Gosh, there's so many. Well, obviously, John's Conscious Leadership book, I think, is outstanding. We've read that, as a team. Um I also love a lot of the books that really are about customer. Malcolm Gladwell has several really interesting books around how people make decisions and process information. And I think going back to the start of this conversation and being an authentic marketer, these are really important. I also enjoy a lot of the books around. Um, Again, more the social psychology of things like predictably irrational and just things that I think the more you can connect to your customers, the more you're able to lead through purpose through your work as a marketer. So that's kind of where the type of book that I gravitate for, not necessarily your traditional leadership book. I guess I get a lot of my leadership insights through spending time with others. I do believe like you often mirror the people you spend the most time with, and good and bad ways. You sort that out from yourself. But mentorship and exposure, like to me, are my biggest learning tools.
And do you make time for fiction in your reading, or is it only nonfiction?
It's from time to time. I mostly read nonfiction. I'm trying to think of the last fiction book that I read. It's been a while, so it's mostly nonfiction, unfortunately.
A lot of people think it's a waste of time, but I think there's more wisdom in fiction than you can find in most nonfiction
Well,
books.
it is. It's relatable about life. I also think, again, the being in it, you're putting your brain in a different context breeds better problem solving. And for me, like a lot of this like comes through I'm always trying to learn how to do new things because I think like that just act of learning actually opens your brain to receive different information or like give you a different perspective on problems. And so that's something that like I've learned over time. Like if I'm blocked or feeling in a rut or getting burnt out, like I need to go do something totally different that maybe even something that scares me a little bit that I've never tried before to try and actually refresh that energy and get unblocked.
And finally, if you could have dinner with two or three people, dead or alive, from
Oh
history,
my
who
gosh.
would you invite?
I have a very small family, and I didn't ever get to spend real time with any of my grandparents. So I actually might want to connect with some of my ancestors and learn a little bit more about my family tree and what makes me me.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Sonya, thank you for helping us at many different levels, talking about the high level purpose and stakeholders, but also driving down into merchandising and how do we do that and how do we organize it. You've covered a bunch of different levels philosophically and very practically. So thank you so much for
Well,
your
it was a
wisdom and
joy.
guidance today. It's been wonderful.
It's such a fun conversation. Thank you both for having me and for the thoughtful questions. And yeah, I look forward to doing it again.
Cool. And for our listeners, if you enjoyed today's podcast on whatever channel you're listening to, please hit the subscribe button or go over to Apple and iTunes and leave us some comments or leave us a rating. And as always, thank you to Rainbow Productions for their help in making this happen, and to Conscious Capitalism, Inc. for its support of this program. And we will see you next week. Thank you.